Kata for the sound of the bell. Mind calm, body at ease, breathing quiet, sentiment benevolent. Dharma friends, sitting still in vital silence, wanting nothing, we practice eco-Buddhism together. The sound of the temple bell booms for all to cease from conflict. May the way of Buddha usher in the dawn of non-violent global village forever. Here is the after sound of the bell. Thunder of silence, light after Dharma rain. Om Amoka Varakana Mahamudra Manipadma Javala Pravataya.
Together, we'll take refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. First in Sino-Korean, in keeping with our tradition, and then in English. Even if you don't know the words, you can throw your voice into it because this is a sound practice. Shivam Samse Chemam Chahe Sanju Ilche Dhammaya Chisim Punyame Shivam Samse Chemam Chahe Sanju Ilche Sangaya And now in English, I go for refuge to the Buddha.
I go for refuge to the Buddha.
My deeply awakened mind,
My deeply awakened mind,
which must be cultivated to be known fully.
which must be cultivated to be known fully.
I go for refuge to the Dharma,
I go for refuge to the Dharma.
truth manifesting everywhere,
Truth manifesting everywhere,
which must be cultivated to be known fully.
which must be cultivated to be known fully.
I go for refuge to the Sangha,
I go for refuge to the Sangha.
deep friendship and interconnection of all beings,
Deep friendship and interconnection of all beings,
which must be cultivated to be known fully.
which must be cultivated to be known fully.
Please remain standing for our dedication. On this 30th day of November, 2025, we acknowledge that this land where our temple buildings stand has been the home of native peoples, the Potawatomi, the Odawa, and the Ojibwe, the Council of the Three Fire Tribes, and also of Black Americans. We know that this neighborhood used to be a historically Black neighborhood during times of racial segregation and oppression. For our own awakening, and for the awakening of all life, may the benevolent energies of our meditation, chanting, and full presence here at this service extend to all beings on this planet and throughout time and space. May there be deepening of our interbeing. May peace prevail and wars cease. Now let us sit for another shorter period of meditation. Please sit comfortably. Good morning, Dharma brothers and sisters. In the second noble truth, the second of the four noble truths, the Buddha talked about how suffering has causes. And he said that suffering comes from greed, anger, and delusion. Or we could say it comes from desire and aversion and not seeing things clearly. And one of the principal culprits in this, of course, is desire. Or another way to put it, the Buddhist scholar Mu Song calls it getting psychologically invested. We often get psychologically invested in things, in people, in outcomes, wanting things to be a certain way. And we often suffer because of it. So the question is, where do we draw the line? How can we draw the line? How can we appreciate the wonderful, joyful experiences in life without having the desire for more? How do we do it and still be able to let go? And also, how can we endure suffering without having the aversion? One of the reasons I got interested in this question is I was watching a Dharma talk online from Ajahn Amaro, and he talked about the cycle of dependent origination. And some of you have seen this 12-step cycle in the Buddhist sutras, where it starts with ignorance, and it has all these stages, these 12 stages: sensation and perception and thinking and feeling and craving and becoming and so on. And then it gets up to suffering. And it shows how suffering ultimately arises from ignorance. And he said that in that cycle, the weak link is between feeling and craving. Between feeling and craving. That's something that's under our control. So many times I'm meditating and I notice that my mind is wandering. You know, that happens to all of us. And then I say, okay, what was I thinking about? Because it's important when our minds wander to not just try to stop it, but to first examine it and say, okay, what was I thinking about? And noticing what you're thinking about. And a lot of it is clinging, you know? I can start to recognize this in meditation, and then through practice, we can start to recognize this in our daily life as soon as it occurs. Like, it occurs and then right away we notice it. So for me, some examples of clinging are experiences like, oh, this cake really tastes good. I got to have that more often. You know, when I'm having a great conversation with a good friend and I feel, oh, I don't want this moment to end. This is so enjoyable. Looking at pictures and I see a nice picture of a backyard that's landscaped really well. And I say, oh, I want my backyard to look like that. I would love to hang out in a setting like that. Or Google, has pictures that they serve up to us on the Chromecast, and they say, and that it's a beautiful view. And, I want to go there. I want to experience that firsthand. One of my favorite books is called Buddhism Plain and Simple. And this book is by a Dharma priest, a Zen priest named Steve Hagen, who's in the Minneapolis, St. Paul area, and he was trained in the Japanese Zen tradition. And my favorite line from that book is, notice when your mind is leaning. Like, our minds lean toward things, and they lean away from other things, desire and aversion. We can notice when we have these preferences, and then it's hard to stop our minds from leaning. That is something that's natural. We're always going to have preference for things. But he says, as soon as we notice it, all we have to do is notice it. When we notice that our minds are leaning towards something or leaning away from something else, as soon as we notice it, our minds start to lean a little bit less. It's like what we were talking about last month with we're not our minds, we're the one who's watching our minds. In a scripture called the Samyutta Nikaya, the Buddha is talking to a householder about how the origins of suffering are in desire and attachment. And the householder says, yes, I have attachment to certain things. I have attachment to certain people, including, of course, his wife. And the Buddha explores this in detail. And the first question that he asks the householder is, before you met your wife, did you have desire for her? And the householder replies, no, I did not. And just that is something interesting, because if we become too attached to a person, an object, or an experience, asking this question can help us to remember that we were okay before we ever encountered the object of our attachment. We were alive, we were functioning, we were often happy. And so that can help us to separate the enjoyment from clinging. In our Zen tradition, one of the most helpful passages for me is an excerpt from the Song of Meditation by our founder, Venerable Samu Sunim. So our guiding teacher is Haju Sunim, and she was trained by Samu Sunim, who is a Zen monk who came over from Korea. And in the Song of Meditation, he says, meditation is knowing yourself. Knowing yourself is setting yourself free from delusions. Setting yourself free from delusions is becoming one with what is. Becoming one with what is enjoying formless life every day. Enjoying formless life is seeing yourself everywhere in happiness and sorrow. That's pretty deep. And I realize it's also somewhat similar to a passage from Dogen. Dogen says Buddhism is studying the self, and to study the self is to forget the self. And to forget the self is to be awakened by the myriad things, being awakened by what we encounter through our perception in everyday life. So when I read Samu Sunim's Song of Meditation, here's what I think about. Meditation is knowing yourself. So recognizing the patterns of our minds, including the recurring obsessions. And knowing yourself is setting yourself free from delusions. So not identifying with our distorted thinking, trying to step back and observe our distorted thinking. Setting yourself free from delusions is becoming one with what is. If it is good, I can realize I don't need to cling to it. It's already part of me through my experience. If it's unpleasant, I can realize, oh, I don't need to struggle against it. I can take action if necessary, but I don't need to have that inner struggle. Becoming one with what is enjoying formless life every day. Formless life. And while there could be several interpretations of what that means, the most meaningful one to me is that I don't have a form. At least not a form that's separate or permanent. I can enjoy these experiences without thinking about their relation to me. Enjoying formless life every day is seeing yourself everywhere, in happiness and in sorrow. To me, that means enjoying things, experiences, and people without identifying them with yourself specifically. This is mine. If I can enjoy them without taking the step of how they relate to me, then there's no fear of missing out. Now, obviously, this doesn't mean that we shouldn't try to achieve things. We need to have some level of desire, we could call it, in order to function in the world. But meditation helps us to recognize when we've crossed over from healthy pursuit of our goals to obsession. One of our dear local teachers, Buddhist teachers, is Barbara Brodsky. She's the founding teacher of Deep Spring Center for Meditation and Spiritual Inquiry, and she's also a good friend of Haji Sunim. And years ago, I heard a Dharma talk given by Barbara Brodsky, and she said, there's an object, and then there's our sensation and our perception, and then our consciousness, and then our feelings of desire, anger, fear, you name it. And she said our problem is that we often confuse the feeling with the object itself. We often confuse the feeling with the object itself. So she told us the next time that happens, see if you can trace that path. And then ask yourself, how can I approach this from a place of equanimity instead? Another one of my favorite authors is Jack Canfield. He wrote the Chicken Soup for the Soul books, and he wrote a book called The Success Principles. And in that book, he said, if you want to remain calm and peaceful as you go through life, you have to have high intention and low attachment. High intention and low attachment. You do everything you can to create your desired outcomes, and then you let it go. And sometimes you don't get the intended result. Sometimes you don't get the intended result at all. Sometimes you don't get the intended result by the time and date that you want it. That's life. Sometimes the universe has other plans for us. And sometimes those plans are even better than the ones that we had in mind. The other part of this, of course, is aversion and suffering. Stress. If it's unpleasant, we can realize that we don't need to struggle against it. What's an unpleasant experience? If someone is yelling at me, I can realize I don't need to struggle against it. If I'm being blamed for something, I'm being blamed for something, but fundamentally, I'm still okay. We know from our experience, don't we, that the fear is often much worse than the actual event. When we're in the actual event, we can ride through it. We often create more suffering for ourselves than we need. When someone hurts our feelings, it's usually because they themselves are hurting. And we can recognize that. Our own aversion, our own anger, rooted in fear, sometimes from not feeling self-confident. One of the most helpful teachings I find is our 3 foundation stones of Zen: peace of mind, contentment, and gratitude. So peace of mind. In this very moment, there's the potential that there's nothing to worry about. In this very moment. In this very moment, there's the potential for contentment, potential that there's nothing lacking. In this very moment, there's the potential for gratitude. There's always something to be grateful for. When we look on our altar, we have a few examples of things to be grateful for. We can remove the hat, and ta-da! We have a falling rutabaga. We have this huge, huge rutabaga that was given to us by our longtime member, Payin. It's hard to lift up without hurting my back. Payin lives in Traverse City right now. I mean, just think about what it took to grow this rutabaga, and he decided to donate it to the temple as an offering. And the temple is going to enjoy it. It's so big, I think in a number of ways the temple is going to enjoy it. Maybe in a soup and other things. And we can be grateful for Bopi helping to put the rutabaga back. And the hat itself, the hat was made by our dear member Wancho. It's homemade. It's made from felt, and it's often brought out around Thanksgiving at the temple. And she's really good with art, you know? This is really beautiful. Somebody brought oranges today. We have these, I think they're grapefruits. They're grapefruits. Somebody brought grapefruits today. Thank you, Samun, for the grapefruits.
I think my neighbor, she saw me shoveling the snow off the car. She's overcome with the possibility of giving away her grapefruit to the whole temple.
Oh. The Buddha talked about how the instructed disciple is not affected by praise or blame. The instructed noble disciple reflects upon it thus: all these are impermanent, bound up with suffering, subject to change. When studying a poem written by the 3rd Zen ancestor, the poem's called Xin Xin Ming. That's when I read the book by Musang called Trust in Mind, The Rebellion of Chinese Zen. And that's where he said this, the sentence that I brought up at the beginning of our talk. We become invested in things. We become invested in things, whether psychological or material, because we believe, at least implicitly, that our apprehension of them are real. What we rarely understand is that we apprehend only our idea of things rather than the things themselves. So it's my impression of this thing. It's not the thing itself. It's my impression of this thing. It's my impression of this person. It's my impression of this experience. It's my impression of what this outcome might be like. So what sometimes works for me is kind of a three-pronged approach, practicing before, during, and after. Practicing before, meditation in the mornings. On the mornings when I meditate, I find that it helps me to be less reactive during the day, less reactive to provocations. And when I say provocations, I mean experiences both pleasant and unpleasant. And then during the day, observation, really trying to be mindful, noticing how I feel about things, noticing if I'm starting to cling to the present moment or to an outcome or to an object. If I'm getting excited about something, that's a clue for me to examine my thinking. You know, I might be watching a video on YouTube of someone doing kiteboarding, you know, and they're on this surfboard and they're holding onto a kite being blown by the wind. And because they have the kite, they can come up out of the water and seem to be floating and then slowly, gently land back in the water. And it's like, wow, I'd like to do that, you know? And this guy in this video, he's 63 years old. And if he's 63 and he can do that, then sure, I can do that. Where if I tried to do that, I'd probably end up in the hospital if I'm lucky, you know? Mogul skiing, same thing. If I'm getting angry about something, someone makes a comment, you're acting that way because when you were growing up in your family, it was like this. Just noticing my tendency to have automatic reaction to that. Joseph Goldstein said, every time we become aware of a thought, as opposed to being lost in a thought, we experience the opening of the mind. And then practicing after. In the Maitreya Buddhist seminary, we all did journaling at the end of the day. And in journaling, one of the most helpful prompts for me was writing down conditions for happiness and writing down conditions for being troubled. And often we found that the conditions for happiness were not what we thought it would be. And number 6 was a difficult prompt, selfless examination. Our selflessness examines our selfish behavior during the day. None of us like to confront the fact that some of our thinking might be selfish. And it's not that we don't have selfish thinking, because we all have selfish thinking to some degree or another. It's just that we can choose to not be taken in by it. So I'll close with one more quote that I like from Stephen Covey, paraphrasing Viktor Frankl. He says, between stimulus and response, there is a space. And in that space lies our freedom and our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our happiness. Now we have about 10 minutes left, and it would be good to discuss what works for you. We can have some sharing of ideas. So raise your hand if you would like the microphone, and we can bring the microphone around and you can share your thoughts on any of this.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So I really enjoyed the part where you said there's a fine line between
going after life goals and obsession over them. As a young man, I find myself recently kind of feeling like I'm running out of time. I feel as though I'm thinking about my future to the point where I'm obsessing over it, where it's causing me more suffering than causing me to actually act and do good. So, but one thing that definitely works for me is meditation. It definitely calms me down and it reminds me to take the edge off from thinking of the future and ground myself back in the present moment.
Thank you.
You see all the old people shaking their head. They're like, no, you have plenty of time, you know, so many things, you know, like, yeah, there's so many changes in our lives. So there's lots of time. Yeah. I really like the when you were reading the Song of Meditation and just that really transforms what I think is kind of this dualistic of like, how can I like things but not get attached to them? And it becomes just maybe how can I experience this present moment deeper, and how can I sort of have that, for me, kind of how can I have sort of a not knowing mind of like not knowing what the outcome's going to be, not trying to experience something fresh in the moment. And so, yeah, I really enjoyed that. And then the other time that I see really aversion or craving kind of come into play is in our interactions with other people, because sometimes it's easy to be, if I'm by myself, I can manage things like aversion. There's not a lot of aversion. And if there's craving, I can just get it, right? But it's when our aversions or what we want are kind of beliefs in the way that the things should be or should happen next comes into conflict with other people. And so that's where it's sort of like, I have to, again, have that not knowing mind and just be present with whatever this person is bringing to me. Thank you.
I just took a meditation class at Veripose in Dexter. And a lot of things are considerably different from what I learned in the Korean Zen tradition. And so when I was doing meditation here, I would be focusing on counting in Korean or a certain phrase that Haju would suggest and stuff like that. It was a very focusing thing. I mean, you focus on something, other things might fly past. Okay, that's okay. And then I just learned today that when I don't focus, I see impermanence all over. I mean, like what my eyes think that they're seeing, things like that. And if I get in a sort of neutral mode of just sitting there, feeling my body and watching things happen, I have a lot of unexpected things that I remember from my childhood. People who I know but I've forgotten for 20 years. These things wouldn't be sensed by me unless I had an open mind. If I was counting or doing something else, I would be focusing on something, but I wouldn't have the chance to appreciate these thoughts that just fly by. And then the other, I'll be real short about the other thing. The other thing was that this guy in Dexter said that that the Buddha thought that there was no self. And you think, what do you mean there's no self? I mean, I am me. And, and I used to say, who am I is my little chant and stuff like that. And the idea is there that impermanence means that there is no self. It's whatever is going on with the conditions that are happening. You fall down the stairs, you go to a new place where people speak a different language, you have some different thoughts about cars or something like that. That's very useful to not hold on to yourself, but allow yourself to kind of blend in with things and react to different things. And a lot of this stuff has parallels in what they're learning about the brain right now, really, which is very, very interesting. Anyway, I'll stop there.
Thank you, Sheila. So one thing I think a lot about is process or orientation over result within all of it, and in being attentive to the extent I have any attachment to it. I mean, we all have attachments to things. It's in how I will approach a particular thing, whether that's from an ethical standpoint, and that's certainly one important part of Buddhist philosophy, but also just in terms of like doing things, making music. It doesn't matter what I've made, like those sound waves will die out. And so, it's the important thing is how I do it and how I move forward with it and how I cultivate the skills that I need to, do that more effectively in a way, but it doesn't really matter what happens because that just sort of goes away. But how you do it, I think, counts for a lot, and keeping that in mind helps me not be so tied to how things turn out.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for the Dharma talk. My teacher told me, he said, all emotions arises from our sixth sense perception. Either it's negative, positive, or neutral. So our sixth sense perceptions and our sixth sense consciousness create these emotions. He said, during your practice, you will have the ability to transcend, as he said earlier, the triple worlds, or the three realms of form, formlessness, and desire. Living this life that I was taught by my teacher, adversity rarely come my way. That's a rare, rare, rare anomaly. Because you all showed me how to move from hindsight to insight to spiritual foresight, so I can see the end before it even begins. And I'm not attached to things like that. I have one aversion. It's called the wife. She the only one can get under my skin, man. Say, but I learned to stay calm, and I learned to keep my damn mouth shut. See, and they told me years ago, a happy spouse make a peaceful house. So my house is full of peace today. Thank you, guys. Love you.
Good morning. Thank you for your talk this morning. I happen to belong to a fellowship that happens to use 12 steps and has a very, very strong emphasis on acceptance and practice. And one of the things I was thinking about as you were speaking is something that through practice, through my practice, and the teachings of those who have come before me, is the phrase second thought, first action. And that was a stunning revelation to me, because I had lived most of my adult life believing and grasping and craving control over feelings, how I felt, whether I was angry or sad. I'm in control of that. And it was a revelation to be given the suggestion, you're really not. And then I thought, well, okay, fine, I'm not in control of my feelings. I'm definitely in control of the thought that I have about that feeling. And that was a revelation that I'm not. So my query was, well, where does my agency start? And that's where the phrase, it's in my second thought and my first action. So accepting a feeling, not judging it, not believing that I have agency over that, that discernment really happens after the feeling, after that first thought about the feeling. When my second thought can arise, that's when discernment and agency and not reactivity or judgment, but that's where I, if I have a self, myself, can participate in a way that is with responsibility. So I guess that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Okay, we have some announcements.
Is there anyone here for the first time? Oh, well, you're very welcome here, and we hope you come back. Public services are offered every Sunday at 10 a.m. Families are especially welcome on the second Sunday of every month when we have a Dharma talk that is geared toward children. Our next family service is December 8th. Please join us with Together Action every Saturday from 3 to 5. This is a work practice, and it's aimed at maintaining our temple and the buildings and the grounds. And we consider hands-on work a vital part of our practice. And as we care for the temple, we care for ourselves. Sign-up sheets for all upcoming events and classes are in the foyer. And please listen as I read some of those upcoming events. Yoga with David Black meets every Tuesday from 6:30 to 8:30. Lotus Sutra Study Group with Qigong Cliff Brown meets every Tuesday from 7 to 8:15, both in person and in Zoom. At each gathering, we read verses from the Lotus Sutra and have the opportunity to share and discuss. Samantha Cyrus Scholl leads a Qigong class on Monday evenings from 6:30 to 8 here in the Buddha Hall. The class teaches you to use gentle movements, stretching, and mindful breathing to bring your body, mind, and spirit deeper into harmony. So there's a sign-up sheet for that as well. The temple offers meditations classes on a regular basis. There's a Thursday evening class from 6:30 to 8:30. And then it's 5-week sessions. And the next class begins on January 8th. We also offer the same instruction in a condensed form. It's an overnight format from Friday evening at 7 p.m. through noon on Saturday. Our next overnight class is December 5th and 6th. Few more here. The temple has a Sangha Care Committee. We invite you to join the Sangha Care Committee in supporting 2 important local initiatives. We will be collecting and assembling goods for food gatherers, Kids Lunches for Love program, and for emergency kits for the Washtenaw County Senior Nutrition Program. Your contributions will help provide food, comfort, and care to children and seniors in need in our community. Please bring all donations by December 7th at 10 a.m. to the Buddha Hall or the container that's on the porch. I think they're under the table right now. And there's one on the porch too? Yeah, okay, good. You may also contribute financially by placing your contribution in the special basket in the lobby. There's a basket just for the contributions to the food program, to scanning our QR code in the lobby, or using a Square credit card, a credit card device, or going to the website, clicking on the donate button. There's a flyer in the lobby if you want more information. In the upcoming e-bulletin, there'll be a QR code for the list of needed items. And if you are aware of anyone who needs a basket, please let us know. The online Sangha meets every Sunday night from 7 to 8:30 This service joins with practitioners from our other temples in Toronto, Ann Arbor, New York, as well as those living at a distance. The Zoom link is located on our website at www.zenbuddhisttemple.org. The temple is entirely supported by your generous donations. There is a fishbowl in the foyer for monetary donations, as well as an electronic credit card service. And that's all.
And I have two more things.
It's not all.
So first of all, Iljan,
Recovery Dharma will meet in the historic Buddha Hall, the yellow house next door to the library, at noon today.
okay. And one way to volunteer your time, if you want to help out the temple with shoveling snow, when we have snow, we need to clear the sidewalks and the paths on the grounds. And so if you're interested in being on a text message list, just be aware that sometimes the shoveling of snow happens like 6 o'clock in the morning if the snow fell overnight. But if you'd like to be on the text list, please see Chijang, Cliff Brown.
Breakfast included.
Oh, breakfast is included. After the snow, the breakfast. Yeah, and it's a good breakfast. The best breakfast in town. And then please help us prepare the room for the upcoming yoga class. As you go, the mats and cushions that are touching the carpet remain, and the other rows of mats and cushions get stacked neatly, the ones on this side into the back corner, and the ones on this side onto the platform.
And to be just a little more specific about that, so one of my goals is to have a stable stack. And so if you think of a stable stack, the larger cushions are underneath the smaller ones. So ideally, the second row over here gets put away first, and then the back row, which are smaller cushions. Yeah.
Good. Let's close with the 4 great vows, and then we'll do three vows. All beings, one body.
All beings, one body.
I vow to liberate.
I vow to liberate.
Blind passions, one root.
Blind passions, one root.
I vow to terminate.
I vow to terminate.
Dharma gates, one mind.
Dharma gates, one mind.
I vow to penetrate.
I vow to penetrate.
The great way of Buddha.
The great way of Buddha.
I vow to realize.
I vow to realize.